Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about some of the spring games and some takeaways from those games. We got into Michigan, Texas, and Oklahoma, but we'll be continuing those throughout the week. But now let's get into some transfer portal updates. There has been so much going on in the transfer portal, and commitments have started to happen. So wanted to break those down for you, and then we'll get into some intel about the transfer portal, and then some tidbits towards the end here. But let's start with all the commitments, the big time commitments at least, that have happened throughout the last little bit. We had Colorado get a pair of big time commitments, as well as another one that will definitely help out in the bunch. Dayon Hayes is probably the biggest one here, an edge rusher from Pitt. Was a big time player at a big time position of need for them. Adding him to someone like BJ Green on the other side is going to be quite the duo. So very excited to see what happens there. They're doing exactly what they did a year ago with the Buffaloes. They're definitely upgrading that talent more and more around there, and it continued with Peyton Kirkland, an offensive lineman from Texas, a guy that genuinely probably would have started for Texas next year, but decided he wanted to get his chance earlier on. I would be not surprised at all if he was starting for them week one, because the athleticism, the size, the ability is just off the charts with this kid. So very excited for what he can do. They also got Ryan Buell, a guy from a D lineman from Ohio, a guy that definitely adds some depth to that position and absolutely helps with some run stopping, which is something they really struggled with a year ago. Definitely need bigger bodies in there, and they'll take pretty much anyone that can produce at that level right now. So definitely some good additions there. They also hosted Dallin Hayden, the running back from Ohio State, Elijah Herring, the linebacker from Tennessee. So definitely a lot of things going on in Colorado, like they always are. Dion is going to do what he does, and he's executing the way that we've become accustomed to in the transfer portal right now. But some other teams that got some help. Oklahoma got a big-time O-line help. Branson Hickman, a transfer from SMU, an all-AAC selection a year ago. So definitely a guy that you need if you're Oklahoma. We just talked about the offensive line being the thing that is going to define their season. So definitely needed some help there, and I would be surprised if this was the only guy they brought in. I think they will be more active, especially on the offensive line and maybe some other positions as they see fit. But definitely that's the main focus for them. Another big time commitment was Graham Nicholson, a Lou Groza winner from a year ago from Miami of Ohio. He is committed to Alabama. Definitely something they absolutely need. We talked about how that position was kind of up in the air after their spring game. Will Reichard moving on to the next level was a huge part of that. Well, they replaced him with one of the best kickers in the entire country. So I think everything should be fine. If you're a Bama fan right now, you should feel okay about that kicking game. So definitely a much needed addition, and you got to feel great if you're a Bama fan about that one. And then Greedy Vance Jr., a DB from FSU, has committed to USC. Trojans continue to build out that defense as much as possible. Obviously, it is going to take time, but they looked pretty good on Saturday, so we'll definitely break that down tomorrow and break down how Greedy Vance can kind of help out this group that is seems to be slowly improving out there in Southern California. But let's get to some intel about where some players might end up in this portal window. And I think the biggest news that has happened since we last talked about this was Jaden Rashada entering the portal, the guy that was in the center of the NIL debacle at Florida, then spent his first year in Tempe with the Sun Devils and Kenny Dillingham. He has decided to enter the portal, and he has his eyes set on Athens, Georgia, it looks like. He will visit UGA on April 30th and May 1st, and he is definitely someone that I think UGA is leading very heavily for. I would be surprised if the wind shifted so aggressively that he went somewhere else. It feels like he's kind of on the Dante Moore track that a lot of people have talked about, where you know that you're not quite at the point where you can fully realize your ability at the top level, but you can sit behind someone that has, in Carson Beck or in Dante Moore's case, in Dylan Gabriel, and learn so much and then hit the ground running. So that feels like kind of what Jaden Rashada is thinking right now. If that happens, Jaden Rashada against Gunnar Stockton for that starting job next year will be something to watch, that's for sure. Auburn and Mississippi State will also get visits, it seems, but UGA is the heavy favorite, and if they add him to that quarterback room, it would just be insane. Penny Boone is another guy, one of the best running backs in the portal. He actually entered the portal in the winter cycle, went to Louisville from Toledo. He was the MAC Player of the Year a year ago, and then transferred right back out in the spring portal window. And some interesting things have been happening around him. He's been reached out to by pretty much every team in the country. He definitely has a lot of talent, a lot of ability, and tons of teams are looking for running backs. But it looks like he might find his way back to Louisville. There has been more and more smoke around him, possibly just sticking with the Cardinals and moving forward with them, which would be very interesting, but kind of the reality of the transfer portal we live in today. He did mention early on in his recruitment that he wants to play in the SEC, but we'll see what happens. Definitely a commitment to watch because behind Damian Martinez, he is definitely one of the most, if not, behind Damian Martinez, the best running back in the entire portal. But let's get to Damian Martinez. He's still very much up in the air, and I think he's going to take his time because this is a big decision for him. Obviously, you're moving on from a place where you felt like your NFL future was just a little bit shakier than it should be, and I think he's trying to move to the team that will give him the best chance to have that NFL future that he definitely should have. And going forward, I tend to lean that Miami and Mario Cristobal will win out for this kid, but Michigan State is still very much in it. UCF is still very much in it, and plenty more teams are going after him. I think Michigan State is one that a lot of people are watching because of Jonathan Smith, but it feels like things are starting to push more and more in the Miami direction. Michigan State is hosting Andrew Paul I believe this upcoming weekend, so they could be looking other directions. And I think if they did get Andrew Paul, him and Aiden Childs would be quite the duo in that backfield and would shock some people definitely this upcoming fall. But let's talk about Cormani McClain. He was the guy that transferred from Colorado after a very weird year where him and Dion necessarily didn't click the way that you would have loved if you were a Buffs fan, and things just didn't quite work out. But he has made some headlines recently by going on Instagram Live and seemingly taking a shot at Colorado. It's kind of, tough to really know what he was trying to say, but he said he really wants to play for a quote-unquote real program, and he wants to not play for clicks. So obviously, Dion in Colorado has gotten quite that rap, being the team that is just out here trying to get as many impressions on Twitter as possible, and maybe Cormani McClain feels the same way. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. It feels like USC and USF are the teams that are kind of standing out right now, but he dropped a top 11 list. I think probably 6 of those teams are not interested, to be totally honest with you. But at the end of the day, I think this is a very talented kid, and if he pops up at USC or USF, I think he could have a ton of success, and hopefully he'll be able to thrive in a new environment, because obviously it just wasn't the right fit at Colorado. But let's finish it off here with the intel, at least, talking about Texas. There has been a ton of talk around that defensive tackle position, something that we talked about in the spring game. Definitely need more bodies there, and they've been doing a lot to fill that void. Bill Norton and Jay Toia are 2 guys from UCLA that they're going after very, very aggressively. They added Johnny Nansen, who is the defensive coordinator at Arizona, excuse me. Both these guys are Arizona. I don't know why I said UCLA. They got Johnny Nansen, who was the Arizona defensive coordinator a year ago. So definitely a huge plus for them to snag those guys up. And if they can do that, I think they'll feel much better about where that position is right now. I think they have the top level talent with Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton, but definitely need some more guys to stand up very, very quickly. But some other transfer news just to add in here. We had Adam Kiasi, a Clemson freshman who just enrolled. He has decided to transfer, and he wasted no time. He is committed to PJ Fleck and the Golden Gophers. The kid is 6'8", but only 235. So definitely has the length. If he can fill out, he could be an absolute game wrecker. Someone like Ethan Burke at Texas, who's 6'7", has kind of become that player where when he came onto campus, he was very lean, but has slowly filled out and become a very, very good player for them. So definitely a huge pickup for Minnesota there. Along with Jaden Rashada leaving Arizona State, Elijah Badger, the top wide receiver for the Sun Devils, has decided to leave. Definitely someone that they were expecting to be the number 1 wide receiver on their team this upcoming window, and it has not been very kind to Kenny Dillingham these first week or so in this window. So definitely a lot of things to answer over there in Tempe, but definitely not the blow that they wanted to take, that's for sure. And then a couple of LSU defenders have found their way into the portal. We had Ryan Yates, a safety, Christian Braithwaite, a linebacker, and Jeremiah Hughes, a corner, all finding their way into the portal. Now, not really sure how big of a deal it is to be losing defenders from the team a year ago, because we all watched that team, and it was not pretty at times. So not really sure how big of a deal this is. I think they're definitely going to be trying to upgrade at a lot of those positions, and it'll be interesting to see what they do in the portal. But all of the stuff in the portal has been very interesting thus far. We've yet to have kind of the big moment, right? I think a lot of people, including myself, were worried this would be one of the craziest portal cycles we've had, and it's had its moments, don't get me wrong, but hasn't quite had the landslide that we were expecting. Hopefully we can avoid that, definitely knocking on wood, but it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the next, week. We still have plenty of time for kids to enter, so it could get wild pretty quickly. But for the time being, it's been, at the very least, as quiet as you could have hoped, I suppose. But we are going to take our final break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about a Good Vibes Monday, and we're going to remind you that the transfer portal isn't all bad. There has definitely been a lot of bad publicity around the transfer portal since it has kind of joined college football, but there's been plenty of success stories as well. So I want to break those down for you guys after this, so stick around for that.